And hello, everyone. Welcome back into another edition of SEC Talk. Conference championships are over and done with. We have our 12-team field of the new college football playoff, and bowl season is here. Probably one of my favorite seasons. You have March Madness, but bowl season, give me that every single day of the week. And not going to lie, outside the SEC and Big Ten championship game, the conference championship weekend was absolute snooze fest. It was blowouts galore. So I'm glad that our conference here, right here in the SEC, delivered on a fantastic conference weekend. But Wade, you had yourself an eventful one, not sporting wise, but you no longer have four of your teeth anymore.
That's right. Like your common Alabama fan, I'm missing some teeth. But yeah, it was a strategic move to have my wisdom teeth removed before conference championship weekend. I kind of banked on there being some good college football on. But like you said, the afternoon games were not that great. So I took a nap and got ready for the Texas and Georgia game because that was fantastic, as was the Oregon and Penn State game. And the Clemson and SMU game ended up being really good. So definitely some good football to take in, but I'm rested up and ready for more action.
Yeah, we'll have more action for you. So on today's show, we're going to mainly focus on the non-college football playoff bowl games. We're mainly focusing on what those SEC teams are in those bowl games. And then on next week's show, it's strictly the college football playoff. We'll pick every single game from the first round and also make our predictions of who we think is going to win the national championship this season. So that's pretty much how our shows are going to be laid out. What's going on, Neil? I know since our Sports Ground podcast doesn't seem like it's going to be coming back anytime soon. So it seems like SEC Talk is going to be carrying this channel right here. So that looks like it's going to be moving forward. But for us, let's get into our final SEC teams in the college football playoff top 25 poll here. Some little changes here and there. Number 2 is Georgia. Georgia with the SEC championship victory in overtime against Texas. So they move up from number 5 to number 2. They'll get a first round bye and during themselves. They're going to be in the Sugar Bowl down there in New Orleans. They're going to be facing off against the winner of Notre Dame and Indiana. That game will be played on Friday night. Number 3, Texas. They went from number 2 to number 3 after the loss of the Dogs in Atlanta. Just Texas, they cannot get over the Georgia hump this year. We'll see if we see that matchup once again in this playoff. Number 7, Tennessee. They remain the same since really they didn't play this week. Same with number 11, Alabama. We'll definitely get to Alabama on the next slide once we get into our college football playoff bracket. And then number 14, Ole Miss. Number 15, South Carolina. They went down after there was a couple of movement with SMU losing to Clemson. Clemson moved up to number 16. SMU moved down to number 11. So there was a little tinkering there. And also Arizona State, they moved up ahead of Ole Miss and South Carolina. So only 3 teams here in the college football playoff bracket. But still, you see 7 teams here in the poll. Number 19, Missouri. So really no changes here. So we finished things up with 7 teams here in this poll. Speaking of the college football playoff, let's go ahead and talk briefly, get our action. We had this on Sunday afternoon. Little drawn out. I hate that ESPN spends 3 hours. They talk about it for 30 minutes and they show it. But you know what? We still got it. So let's just go through this. So your top 4 seeds, the Big Ten champs, and the only undefeated team in college football is the Orange Ducks, so they will be playing in the Rose Bowl. Number 2 is the Georgia Bulldogs, so the SEC champs. As I mentioned, they get the Sugar Bowl, so a little bit of a home field advantage, especially when you have Notre Dame and Indiana. Coming to New Orleans, number 3, Boise State. Some little talks, we'll definitely get into that. I don't think that many people agree that Boise State should be number 3. And probably one of the hottest team in college football, number 4, is Arizona State. They beat Iowa State pretty handily there. So looking at this, we'll get into the rest of the seeding. Do you agree with Boise State being the 3 seed? Because I know that there is some talk of how this seeding's kind of screwed up, of how it's automatically to the conference champion. So how do you feel about that?
I mean, I think under the current structure, they got it right with Boise and Arizona State. But it is a little gimmicky, to have Texas ranked at 3rd overall and then they're going to be the 5 seed in the bracket, or have a team like Clemson be 12 here and they're 16th in the rankings. I like the idea of giving all conference champions an automatic bid, or the top 4 highest ranked conference champions an automatic bid. But then from there, I think that all the seeding should just be based off the rankings. Otherwise, I just don't understand the need for confusion to have, multiple numbers by different teams. And then the other thing I'm looking at here, I wonder if the second round sites were predetermined based off the seed, because you would have thought Georgia would have been wanting to play in the Peach Bowl, but maybe that was already decided upon before they announced it.
Yeah, well, the history is behind the selection. So usually the SEC, really the champion goes to the Sugar Bowl. So that's kind of the tie-in there. Same with the Rose Bowl with the Big Ten. So a couple of tie-ins, with the Fiesta Bowl. Boise State was, since they were the 3 seed. I mean, if Arizona State was the 3 seed, they would have been the Fiesta Bowl. So that kind of changes where Arizona State goes. But looking at the rest of the bracket, let's go to the left side of it. You have this is going to be with the first round. It's going to be, let's say if you're the 6th seed, the 7th seed, you will host that. So Notre Dame will host number 10 seed Indiana. Penn State, they're going to be doing a whiteout 11 a.m. game against SMU. They got into the field with the number 11 seed. On the right side of the bracket, we have 8-9 matchup with Ohio State and Tennessee. That game will be in Columbus, Ohio. And then the final one, 5 and the 12, Texas and Clemson. So out of all those 4, which one intrigues you the most?
I think it's got to be the Ohio State Tennessee game, which is right down the middle. So you expect those teams to be the most competitive. I don't know. I just feel like that is what we were gunning for when we came up with this college football playoff. Neither team even played for their conference championship, but you kind of feel like both teams could be good enough to win a national championship, especially on the Ohio State side. And I just think there's a lot of intrigue there with who they would play in the second round, especially. So I think that's the game I'm looking forward to the most. And then I also just think the Battle of Indiana is pretty much out of left field, which is kind of cool as well. But I got to say Ohio State, Tennessee. What about you?
Yeah, that's what I'm circling to, Ohio State, Tennessee. That's going to be a good one. And really, the 1 seed, they did not get an easy path, because I know that you get in the Rose Bowl, but to play Ohio State and Tennessee in the second round, whereas if Penn State wins theirs and get to play Boise State, same with Texas too. So, I mean, the way that this is set up, the 1 seed doesn't really have an easy path, whereas the 5 and the 6 have a little bit more of a manageable path. But hey, it's college football; anything could happen. So we could just be like, "Oh, Penn State has an easy path, and SMU
got to beat everybody."
Yep, that's why I was really excited for these home matchups. So that's what I'm looking forward to the most, because Ohio State, they get a night game, Notre Dame at night. Those environments are going to be hectic, especially in a playoff environment. So we will talk more about the college football playoff in the coming weeks as it gets closer here. But for us, we're back to talking about SEC, and we're going to, before we get into our SEC fantasy, we want to get our fans involved. So if any questions, feel free to leave us a comment, and we will get to it after our hot topic segment here at the end of the show. So like I mentioned, SEC fantasy, we didn't have it last week since there's only 2 teams that we could choose from. But this is one of my favorite weeks when we start selecting our bowl teams for the draft. So we'll go through the rosters really quick. But for this week alone, mainly picking from the non-college football playoff bowls. So we have a lot to choose from. There was a lot of SEC teams in these bowl games. So here are the rosters. We did this pretty much the past couple of years. It's pretty simple what we did already, but we double it. So 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 2 defenses. And there's really no rules for this. All the players that we picked are now in play, and all the defenses, our SEC defense gauntlet, that is over and done with. So all the SEC defenses were available. Wade, you won pretty convincingly in rivalry week. You had the number 1 overall. I believe, yes, you did use it on a quarterback, and that's going to be none other than Garrett Nussmeier. Could this be the final game that we see him in the purple and gold? the world may never know. And then I'm going to just go with the hot hand here, Lenore Sellers going up against Illinois. So talk about Garrett Nussmeier's matchup going against a Baylor defense that, isn't the Baylor defense of the past. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I think that there's shootout potential between LSU and Baylor. I think a lot of depth will be slashed just with the way the transfer environment is. I think there'll be a lot of young defensive players out there, and Garrett Nussmeier is a veteran at this point. And I think I think he had a good season, but I think there was some frustrations with certain games, and I think he puts it all together. And this is just a stress-free environment for him to just air it out, just like we saw him last year in Tampa in his first ever start. So,
Yep.
Yeah, I think he has a good game here. It's been pretty quiet on the draft front for Nuss, but I do believe he's probably coming back to LSU. I just think that he's in a position where he could develop a little bit more and be at the top of next year's quarterback draft class. So look for him to get some momentum here in bowl season, and that's why I took him number 1.
Seems like a pretty easy 300 yards that you're going to get from Nuss Bus. I'm going to go with Lenore Sellers. You've been using him pretty much every time that you can take him. And this is my first opportunity to take Lenore Sellers for this entire season. So I waited for the bowl season. And like you mentioned, there's going to be some opt-outs. But the South Carolina team is not going to be opting out. They're going to be excited to play against Illinois. In Illinois, they got a pretty good defense, but Lenore Sellers, I mean, he's just been cooking defenses left and right for the past couple of weeks. So I'm going to trust him to do his thing, give me a couple of yards on the ground and throw it to your best receivers to finish off potentially a 10-win season for Shane Beamer and his squad and get some momentum heading into this 2025 season because you are going to be losing Raheem Sanders, but you are going to be getting Lenore Sellers back. And that defense is going to be really good again next season. So a lot to look forward to for South Carolina heading into their bowl game against Illinois. Now let's go on to the running backs. We do have some new faces here with 2 freshmen running backs, one from Texas A&M with Amari Daniels, gets a good matchup against USC. Caden Durham, LSU running back, like I mentioned, Baylor's rushing defense isn't that great. So Amari Daniels, we picked Le'Veon Moss multiple times this season. He's out with an injury, and it's been Amari Daniels. How do you like his matchup against this Trojans defensive front?
Yeah, it's a Trojans defensive front that is very banged up and thin due to transfers. So I like Daniels' matchup here. This is more of a role than it is about the specific player, but he's a young guy. He's going to be playing. And sometimes we see guys really get some momentum for next season in the bowl season. And I think this is a chance for him to do that. This system really plays well for running backs. So Daniels could kind of have a coming out party as the season ends.
Yeah, you're probably looking at the future RB1s for both of these teams. So with Daniels, and now I'm going to go to Durham. We just coming off of a game where Josh Williams had over 100 yards rushing. So you are going to see, not much of a bell cow as you are from Amari Daniels, but Caden Durham, he can get some yardage in the receiving department and also the rushing game too. So Caden Durham, I think that they're going to use him very much as LSU looks also like most of these teams are going to use this bowl game to really see what they have going into next season. So I think that Caden Durham, he's been a bright star for LSU. He's going to be a star for at least 3 more years here, and he's going to go on to the NFL and be a really good back in the next level. So Caden Durham and Amari Daniels are 2 running backs. So now let's go on to the pass catchers. 2 also no really new faces here. Veterans here of SEC Fantasy, Ryan Williams of Alabama gets a good matchup against Michigan. Will Johnson hasn't really played much, and I'm guessing he is just eyeing heading into NFL draft and preparing for what he's going to do with that. And then Andrew Armstrong gets a good matchup. Probably take the over in this game because Arkansas and Texas Tech, 2 explosive offenses, probably could be in the 40s, 30s there. So that's one of the reasons why I picked Andrew Armstrong. But Ryan Williams, he's been a little bit quiet. Do you see an explosion against Michigan in the bowl game?
Yeah, I do, because I think Will Johnson could very well opt out of this football game. And I think Ryan Williams it's good to bet on these young players in the bowl games. I think their heads in it. And, I think Milrow is going to want to have some fun. if he plays in this one. And everybody knows he can run it, but why not air it out? It's going to be hard to run on Michigan anyway. So I look for Williams to get involved. He's kind of been slow down the stretch here, but I think he has a big bowl game.
Yep, good pick there for Williams. I'm going to go for strong, like I mentioned. I was just really going towards bowl games where I think it's going to be one of the more higher scoring ones. I think Arkansas and Texas Tech are going to be right there with them. So Taylor Green, I almost went with him at the quarterback. I almost did a Razorback stack, but I wanted to give Lord Sellers some love for one more time this 2024 season. But Andrew Armstrong, I feel confident in him going up against the Texas Tech second. That could definitely be exploited with this Arkansas team. So Andrew Armstrong and Williams are your picks. And now let's go on to the defenses. You're going to go with South Carolina, like I just mentioned. They're going up against an Illinois offense led by Luke Altmaier, a former Ole Miss quarterback. So that relies heavily on the ground game. So South Carolina's defensive front, I think in my eyes, fare well with them. Oklahoma, on the other hand, going up against a triple option attack of Navy. And Navy, I think that, they start off undefeated, but if you really looked at them the past couple of weeks, haven't really looked too good, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And you looked at Oklahoma's defense, they just got really routed by LSU. So I think that's a squad that's just ready to get back on the field there. So South Carolina, how do you feel about their matchup going up against the Big Ten foe in Illinois?
I think it's going to be a pretty competitive football game, but I do see it being maybe more low scoring. So I think that bodes well to the Gamecocks defense. And I think this team, you mentioned it just a little bit ago, they're going to be bought into this football game. They want to get that 10th win. This South Carolina defensive front is as good as any in college football. And then they got a good secondary as well. So, a lot of it when you're picking these bowl matchups is what's the whole unit look like? And I think South Carolina is one of the teams where you can say, okay, they're up to full strength. They got their whole unit. And, I think Illinois, like you said, they run the ball. They burn a lot of clock. So I think it plays well. And I don't know, maybe I'm a try-hard because I didn't pick South Carolina all season as my defense. So I'm still not reusing teams here.
Yep, absolutely there. So you're just continuing on with the gauntlet picking South Carolina. Yeah. I just gave you all my mention of Oklahoma. I really like their matchup against Navy, and it won't be as easy next week when we pick our defenses. We only have three to pick from. And if one of us picks Georgia, well, we'll have to wait another week to put in those results. So that's going to be interesting how that goes in next week's draft. But South Carolina and Oklahoma are our two defenses on the non-college football playoff bowls. So that is the SEC fantasy draft for this week. Definitely tune in the next week as we complete our rosters for the bowl season. We do have one game to get to, and that was the SEC championship game in Atlanta. And for the first half, it was a defensive battle. It was like 6-0 at the half. We saw Carson Beck go out with an injury. More than likely, he is out for the season. So not what you want to hear if you're a Georgia fan, but you like what you saw from Gunnar Stockton. I mean, my gosh, he just came in, and Georgia, boom, they scored a touchdown on their first drive. And then going into overtime, he took a big hit. Honestly, if I was quarterback, I would have fumbled that ball, but kudos to him. He held on to that ball, and Georgia was able to score. We saw Trevor Etienne. I feel like Trevor Etienne, we saw him have a big game last time that we were talking about this game against Texas. Dealt with an injury the past couple of weeks. Now he's back, and I think that Trevor Etienne, we saw him run really well as we see Georgia win this game 22-19 against Texas. Quinn Ewers, if you ask him, probably not one of his best performances. We saw Arch Manning. I thought we were going to see Arch Manning more than we thought. I think that we only saw him for like one or two plays, and it was both running plays there. So if you're Texas, I would definitely look for more ways to implement Arch Manning into this offense. So definitely surprising from the offensive side of the ball. I thought that Texas was going to learn from their mistakes and the last meeting that we saw just a couple of months ago. But nonetheless, Georgia, once again, I mean, who would have thought that this team would be in the SEC championship after their loss to Ole Miss? But here they are. Kirby Smart rallied the troops. They got their first SEC title since, I believe, the 2017 season. So it's been a couple of years. Texas, this was their first go around in the SEC, and they did pretty well there. So Georgia, with this win, like we mentioned, locks up the number 2 seed. Texas, we'll see them in the number 5 seed, facing off against Clemson as Georgia ends up getting this victory there. So what are your overall takeaways there? I know that you're pretty high on Texas heading into the preseason, but heading into the playoff, you got to be a little bit worried about them, though.
Yeah, I mean, they just don't look like a complete team. Honestly, I thought they played better than Georgia most of the football game. They were, I don't want to say played conservatively, they just played scared. They were scared to push the ball downfield, and they thought they could run the clock out. And then, they play for overtime, and that's fine. You kick the field goal, you get overtime. Well, then you come out in overtime and you're not aggressive when you get the ball first. And I knew it was over when they didn't score a touchdown.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to get the ball first in overtime, I know it's not ideal, but in college, both teams get the ball, so it's not that big of a deal. You need to go and score and set the tone. And when they kicked another field goal after kicking a field goal in regulation to even get to overtime, I just knew it was over because Georgia had the crowd on their side, and I just felt like they had the momentum to get it done. And you can debate the quarterbacks as much as you want, but at this point in the season, if they're going to rock with yours, they got to fully commit to them. They got to call some deep shots for them. But honestly, his play looked very nonchalant, and the team just looked scared. So I am a little worried about them. They do have a tough first round playoff matchup with a hot Clemson team. I mean, they could be quickly disposed of if they don't turn it around. And for Georgia, I feel like this team's just getting better. I know playing without Carson Beck is going to be tough for sure. But I think that they have enough. I think their ground game's dynamic enough that it can kind of carry whoever's at quarterback. And I just think that defense is.
Oh, yeah.
When they're on, man, they're a force to be reckoned with. I know we've seen them look pretty bad at times, but talk about a unit that if I need a 3 and out and I'm putting my life savings on it, I don't know if there's another unit in this college football playoff that I would pick besides Georgia, and they delivered when it counted.
Yeah, absolutely. The crazy thing is this was the first overtime game that we saw in this SEC championship ever. And so that was definitely a note to see. But yeah, both of these teams, Georgia get at least a couple of days more rest. But Texas right back on the field against a club that we thought was dead in the water after that South Carolina game. But Syracuse beat Miami, and then Clemson. They were cruising in the first half. SMU came all the way back, and then Clemson hit a 56-yard field goal to win that one. So we'll see the Longhorns and the Tigers square off in Austin. So we will see if SEC teams can stay alive because we only have 3 of them. So Tennessee's got a big one, and Texas also has a big one too. So let's now dive into how we did in the pick'ems. Let's just say, well, it was a week to forget for us because not one of us got over 500, 4-5 for Wade and I, and Chet went 3-6. A lot of wrong games. I mean, the MAC, you had an absolute blowout of Ohio, beating Miami, Ohio. Marshall ended up beating Louisiana. And you had Army beating Tulane there. So that was a lot.
Vegas had a lot of wrong picks too.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was just an overall bad week to pick in the conference championship because you just didn't know what to expect there. So now let's head into the bowl games. Like I mentioned, the non-college football playoff SEC bowl games is what's going to be our focus for this week. And next week, we'll get right into the college football playoff. So let's dive into what's going to kick off the SEC bowl slate. It's the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa Bay, Florida. It is the Tulane Green Wave versus Florida. Now, there's some rumors about John Sumrall maybe heading to North Carolina. Well, John Sumrall shut that down as he'll be returning to Tulane's head coach. But they lost their star quarterback, though, to the transfer portal. Who knows who's going to start for Tulane? So that's a note to look forward to. Florida, though, they were the talk of the town the past couple of weeks with back-to-back top 10 victories against Ole Miss and also LSU there. So who do you like in between the American versus the SEC in this Gasparilla Bowl?
Well, kudos to Tulane for keeping their coach around for another year. I mean, he's done an amazing job, and I'm happy for Tulane that Summerall will be staying. But losing Mensah is big, so I can't discount that. And this team's looked pretty flat the last 2 times out. So I am going to go with Florida in this one. Would it shock me if Tulane puts it all together? No, but if they're doing it with the backup quarterback, I just can't really bank on that.
Yeah, I don't really see this one being close. The way that Florida's been playing the past couple of weeks, and Tulane's defense. I mean, if you watch them against Army, they couldn't stop Bryson Daly worth a lick, and then Memphis, they ran all over them. So Montreal, they could either go like, "Hey, Montreal Johnson, give me an easy 100-yard game."
Montreal would have been a good pick, man.
Yeah, I almost thought about him. Not gonna lie, but I'm gonna go with the Gators. I think that this is one of the easy bets where it's just gonna be over by halftime. I just think that Tulane's just outmatched in this game against Florida. Chet's also going with the Gators, so all rocking with the SEC team against Tulane. Next bowl game is the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl, Oklahoma versus Navy. Navy does have one game to play. It's the annual Army and Navy game. Quick pick. Who do you like in that one, Navy or Army? I'm going with Army.
Yeah, I mean, Army's just been pretty lights out. That Daly guy's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, he is. I wish that he was with me on my dynasty that I just took over. But Oklahoma, 6-6 for them. Probably not the season that they had in mind. But to get to a bowl, get to a bowl game in your first season in the SEC is pretty good. Well, let's talk about this quarterback situation. Jackson Arnold's in the transfer portal, so we'll see the freshman. We saw him a couple of games, but Oklahoma's defense might be the story in this one against Navy. So do you like the Sooners or the Midshipmen in this Armed Forces Bowl?
This is tricky. Like you said, Oklahoma is going to be down a quarterback. I mean, Oklahoma kind of runs an option as well.
Yeah,
so you're going to see a lot of running. I just think the physicality of Oklahoma is going to wear into this one. But one thing's for sure about playing a service academy is these guys are going to care. So that always concerns you.
Especially if they lose to
Oklahoma cares, they're going to win.
But, yeah, I think that you hit it on the head. I mean, Oklahoma, we just saw them in the games that they dominated this season. What do, they run the ball pretty effectively there. So they're going to have to do that against this Navy team. Like you mentioned, Navy, they're not going to have any opt-outs. They're going to be locked into this bowl game. So give me Oklahoma as well. I think it is going to be close, low scoring. Both teams love to run the football, so you go with that one. So give me Oklahoma. Chet, it's going to go the opposite way. Go with the troops.
And I don't blame him for that.
Yeah, I don't blame him either. I mean, if you're looking for an upset, go with Navy, especially if they lose to Army. And this is going to be a team that wants to finish off their season strong because, like I mentioned, this was a team that went undefeated, but then they played Notre Dame, and you know that happened. So Navy looking to finish off a good season with a victory against Oklahoma, but 2 on the Sooners, 1 on the Midshipmen in the Armed Forces Bowl. Moving on to the next game, it's the Birmingham Bowl, and not going to lie, this is the most underrated game. I am excited for this one. Georgia Tech versus Vanderbilt. Georgia Tech and Vandy, they're some scrappy bunches. They're good football teams. Georgia Tech by Haynes King, Vanderbilt. We have Diego Pavia. It's going to be the final time that we see Diego Pavia, so you might as well enjoy it while we have it here. So with that being said, we're going to go with the ACC and the SEC in this Birmingham Bowl.
Hey, I agree with you. This game is the chef's kiss. I mean, you got 2 up-and-coming teams that exceeded expectations, hung with the big dogs all year. Geographically, it's like perfectly central between the 2 teams. I mean, it's everything that we want to see in a bowl game. I'm going to go with Vanderbilt in this one. I think Georgia Tech might actually be the better football team right now. But I think Vanderbilt's scrappy, and Diego Pavia is going to want to go out a winner.
Yep.
And I know he's going to be locked in. And when he's locked in, this team does amazing things. So give me the Commodores here. I think it's going to be close, a very evenly matched ball game. And I wouldn't be surprised to see this one even go to like overtime or something. You know, it's gonna be.
Yeah, close. I could see this go. Oh my gosh, Georgia Tech is like overtime. They've gone.
They're the overtime kings.
Yeah, really. Yeah. So if this does go over overtime, I would lean towards Georgia Tech. But yeah, like you mentioned, two evenly matched teams, two quarterbacks, just like they're not going to slide in this game. They're going to get every yard that they could get for their teams. So yeah, it's going to be a heck of a game to watch. But I'm going to go with Georgia Tech. Down the stretch, they've just been a better football team than Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's kind of struggled as of late after their big victory against Alabama and after they kept it close with Texas. They haven't really caught my eyes. They did in the early of the season. I think that Haynes King wants to go out on top two. So give me Georgia Tech and the Yellow Jackets. Sorry, SEC. I just don't see you going undefeated in the bowl season.
Never do.
It just never happens. So give me Georgia Tech. And looks like I'm the lone ACC.
Hey, I wouldn't feel bad in your spot.
No, I wouldn't either. We're also doing Bowl Mania, so this could be a game where I either fall or go up the standings there. So Chet and Wade are on the doors, and I'm on the Yellow Jackets in this game. Moving on to the next one, it's the AutoZone Liberty Bowl out there in Memphis, Texas Tech versus Arkansas. Like I mentioned, take the over, take a lot of points because these are two explosive offenses there. So going to go with the Red Raiders or go with the Hogs in the Liberty Bowl.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very exciting offensive display. Texas Tech is going to be down their best receiver. He might be wearing purple and gold, so that could play into our favor.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Arkansas here. This is a team that needs to build momentum for next season. They'll have their quarterback back. They'll have Armstrong back, I believe, and they will not have
in the
Quentin
transfer
Jackson.
portal. So
What's
they're going to be looking. Yeah, Luke Haas, or one of their top tight ends, is in the portal.
That's right. Probably going to like Ole Miss. So, yeah, this team's got to build some momentum. But Taylor Green's hard to stop. And I think that they'll be able to run the ball as well. So give me Arkansas in this one. I think the winner of this one could get into the 40s. Didn't we see Arkansas and Kansas play in the Liberty Bowl?
We might see that once again. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them there. It's like crazy.
There's some fans there too. It's not a hard trip.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of Arkansas fans there, so it could be a little bit of home field advantage for them. Yeah, I think that Arkansas, they've been one of those teams, like at the start of the season, would we even see them in the bowl game? Nope, but here they are, had a really good season. Taylor Green has been phenomenal. Jaquindon Jackson, his final game as Arkansas Razorback, I think is going to go out on top. So give me Arkansas this one. I won't even give you a score. Just might even go into the 40s and the low 50s in this one of how many points will be scored there. Is Chet going to stick with us and go to the SEC? No, he's not. He's going to go with the Red Raiders. He's going to go with Texas Tech there. So another bowl game to watch in the standings for us. So let's move on to the next bowl game. It's the SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. Well, USC starting in Las Vegas and now finishing their season in Las Vegas. So Texas A&M versus USC. Like I mentioned, after that big victory against LSU, the season opener, it has been the season to forget for the Trojans. Texas A&M 8-4 in their first season with Mike Elko. Looks like the future is going to be really bright for this team there. So how do you see this one going in Las Vegas?
Not good for USC, honestly.
Yeah.
I think Marcel Reed just takes this game over. I almost picked him as my quarterback. But it's just risky because you might not have the yards through the air, but I just don't see Southern Cal being bought into this game. I think Texas A&M is more excited to play in this game than they would have been to Texas Bowl or something.
I was excited to go to Vegas.
Yeah, so I think it's a bad look for USC. I think they go 1-1 this year in Vegas.
Yeah, I don't really see this one being close. This is an overmatch for USC. With Bear Alexander now entering the transfer portal, that's one of their best defensive tackles. And you got a guy like Marcel Reed and
That dude lives in the transfer portal.
Yeah, well, that's not going to be good for USC. So give me Texas A&M to avenge the SEC laying an egg in week number 1. So give the Aggies of A&M. They finish off a good season, get to 9 wins. And Chet's also going to go with the Aggies. Probably no surprise. I think a lot of people are going to be picking A&M in this one. Just more of a talented football team. And, well, Lincoln Riley might be playing for his job because I just don't know how long he's going to be staying there much for. But we'll see. Moving on to the next bowl game. It's the TransPerfect Music City Bowl. Thank God they didn't put Vanderbilt in this one. And they actually put a SEC team that has to travel, get you the night vacation for the week. It's Iowa, though. I feel like Iowa has been to this Music City Bowl for, so many years in the past. But we have the Hawkeyes of Iowa out of the Big Ten. They face off against number 19 Missouri. Probably not the bowl game that we saw in the preseason for Missouri, but still a good season for them. They have an opportunity with a win to get to 10 wins. So do you see that happening once again? Do you see Eli Drinkwitz and the boys getting back-to-back 10-win seasons?
This is a good matchup for sure, and two different offensive styles. I'm going to go with Missouri, but my concern is, who plays in this one.
It won't be Luther Burden because he's already entering his name in the draft.
Yeah, and then Theo Weiss. I think he'll stick it out and play. Brady Cook would probably play, but, I think no matter how you line it up, Missouri has the offensive talent to win this game. But Iowa, they're one of the better programs when it comes to bowl games. So
that is true.
Totally discount them, but I think if Missouri reaches their potential, they'll win this game.
Yeah, this is a tricky one to pick because, like you mentioned, Iowa, I feel like every time I pick against them, well, they ended up winning in like some weird fashion, like just like a couple of years ago against Kentucky. But I'm going to go with Missouri even without Luther Burden. I think that they're going to be able to just run the ball effectively. I think that Brady Cook showed me something in that Arkansas game. He wants to go out victorious in this one. And, yeah, if you play Iowa, well, you better bring that defense. And Missouri's defense got to step up against this Iowa team that's going to want to control the game. So you just got to be patient with the drives that you get. Jet's also going to go with Missouri. So, yep, that scares me now because it's a clean sweep against Iowa. But rocking with the SEC in the Music City. Moving on to the next one, it's the ReliaQuest Bowl. I don't know why the hell they went away from the Outback Bowl to another bank. Like, oh, let's just put it on banks and taxes, everyone. But number 11, Alabama versus Michigan. Hey, we're back to this matchup. It's not in the Rose Bowl game in the playoff, but it's in a bowl game. But number 11, Alabama versus Michigan. Do you see Michigan winning once again, or do you see the Tide getting a little bit of revenge for Nick Saban?
I think Alabama handles business. This Michigan team they really looked bad at points this season. So I think Alabama gets it done. You can't cry about missing the playoff and then go lose this game. So I think they use that as motivation.
Yep. Well, if they want to prove it to us on the field there, just go take care of business against Michigan, the ReliaQuest Bowl. But Michigan, like you mentioned, they haven't really looked too good. Their quarterback play, it's been like a quarterback carousel. Every quarterback on the roster has played at least a game in this one, but it looks like they stuck on Davis Warren. You'll probably have your two running backs playing in this game, Donovan Edwards and Mullings there. You probably won't have your star DB, but you haven't had him for most of the season. So this defense should definitely be well inept. And what does Alabama struggle against? It's the run. What does the Michigan love to do? They run the ball. Recipe for disaster. Give me the upset. Go with the Michigan Wolverines. It's going to be an ugly game. It's going to be a low-scoring defensive battle, pretty similar to what we saw in last year's matchup. But give me Michigan. I think that I'm the opposite. I don't even think Alabama cares a single ounce to be in this game. Michigan, they went 7-5. Maybe they're not, but I don't know. Something just tells me to pick Michigan in this one just to be different because Chet's going with Alabama there. So 2 on the Tide, and I'm 1 on the Go Blue train there. So we'll see if Michigan makes me smart, it makes me look dumb, and they get blown out like 42-3. But let's move on to the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, and this is our SEC talk game of the week for these bowl games, as it's number 15 South Carolina versus number 20 Illinois. South Carolina, I thought that this was going to be Alabama, but they're like, we want that team who's been playing well. So South Carolina giving a little bump to Alabama there. So I'm guessing you're going to roll with the Gamecocks against Illinois, especially with the way that they've been playing.
I am. I'm going to go with South Carolina, but these are two teams that are like what it's all about. They want to be here. This is a program-defining accomplishment for both of these squads. Neither was projected to be in a bowl game this good going into the season. So I think you're going to see a good effort from both teams, but I do think South Carolina overall is the better team, and I think they're more dynamic on offense.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with South Carolina based on that. More dynamic on offense. Their defense, I mean, that defensive front is going to be able to stop what Illinois comes to them. So honestly, I could see this being a close game, but honestly, wouldn't surprise me if South Carolina just runs over Illinois with this one because I just think that they're the more talented team in this one. But I say that, and Illinois could win the game. So, I mean, that's just how bowl season is. But feel confident picking South Carolina. They're also going to want to prove to the committee that they belong there. So look for South Carolina and Shane Beamer's squad to pour it on there. And Jets also going to go with South Carolina, so rocking with the SEC over the Big Ten in this match. On to Houston, Texas. I feel like this is like the bowl game that changes sponsors like every single year. It went from the Tax to Academy to Kinder's. Don't know what the heck that is. It must be some Texas brand.
There's a sauce company, apparently.
Oh, well, that's just fantastic. All right, Baylor versus LSU. Well, this has some storylines as the head coach of Baylor was the former DC when LSU last won the national title, Dave Aranda. So you have some ties there. There are going to be a lot of Baylor and LSU fans there. So expecting a good crowd down there in Houston. So do you like between the Bears and the Tigers down there in H-Town?
Well, now's a good time as ever to announce it.
Go better
I
than
will be at this
the
game.
Texas Bowl, because remember last time LSU was in this game, they started a wide receiver at quarterback.
Yes, we had John J. Kirkland. No, I am not driving to Houston to watch John J. Kirkland line up for the Tigers. He did a great job, but I think we're in better shape. Yep. But yeah, we're going to go to this one with some Baylor friends and sit in the Baylor section. So that will be interesting. Okay. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think Garrett Nussmeier, I think this is kind of like Burrow when he played UCF, where like he had a good season, some frustrating moments, puts it all together and uses it to springboard into next season. At least that's what I hope.
Yeah.
I think it is going to be an offensive game. I could see LSU losing in heartbreak because the defense is going to be thin, but I don't think it's going to be an offensive problem. I mean, if you're a guy like Kyron Lacey, you might as well stick it out and play. But even if he doesn't, I think we'll see some of the younger receivers. But yeah, give me LSU in this one. It's going to be like, 34-27 or something like that. I think it's going to be pretty close.
I'm more invested of the defense getting some momentum heading into the 2025 season because I think that we know at this point what the offense can do. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier, he's probably going to go step up to the field. I mean, he's probably going to have an interception, but hopefully that doesn't cost LSU in this game. Look for Josh Williams and Caden Durham. I think that Aaron Anderson, since he's coming back, look for him to be the wide receiver one. I think that Lacey will play. I mean, he's an in-state guy. He's going to give it one last go. But, I mean, same thing. I don't know if Mason Taylor is going to be playing. Who knows? You just don't know with these bowl games what you're going to get. But ended up going to go with LSU, though. I think that they're going to want to slay some demons. The last time that they went to Houston, it was just not a very good bowl game. But Baylor, they're always going to come to play. I mean, that's a team that has won 6 straight games, so they haven't even failed a loss like over a month. So you can't overlook them. It's going to be a close game. Give me 34-31. It's going to be a back and forth game, a 4-quarter battle, but LSU gets the victory. And Chet's also going to go with the purple and gold there. So another clean sweep for the SEC. We do have one more bowl game to get to, and that's the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl between 9-3 Duke and 9-3 number 14 Ole Miss. So do you think that the SEC gets the victory here? Or do you think that Duke takes them down?
Look, I'm in trouble. I went all SEC teams. Yeah, give me Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss has really dominated the ACC when they've gotten to play them. They swept their home and home with Georgia Tech and Wake Forest pretty handedly, and then I think they played somebody else that I'm missing. But regardless, I think they get it done here against Duke. Duke's been a pleasant surprise. I mean, they definitely made the right hire with Diaz, and they were able to continue some of that momentum that they built last season under Elko. And they got a good quarterback in Murphy if they can hold on to him. So I think this game could be a shootout.
Yeah, absolutely. I could definitely see that too. But I have Ole Miss not only slaying their taxes, but slaying the Blue Devils here. It was just announced today that Jackson Dart will be playing in this bowl game.
All
So
right.
that's good
Good.
news if you're a Rebels fan there. So I think if him playing there, I could definitely see this being a shootout.
Definitely feel good
But
about it now.
I have been impressed with Ole Miss's defense down the stretch there. So I think that this could get away from Duke if Malik Murphy doesn't have really any success through the ground. But give me Ole Miss to win this one. Chet's also going to go with Ole Miss there. So down the stretch, we're all picking the SEC. And yeah, you might want to change a couple of games when we do the Bowl Mania to not pick all the SEC. But hey, we'll take it. If we were to go undefeated, we will take that as a conference. But I just don't see it happening. So those are our bowl games. And now let's end things off here with Hot Topic. The first one, do we agree with Alabama being left out and SMU being in?
I mean, if you put them on the field and you told me I had to put money on it, I'd probably bet on Alabama. But I don't think they made the wrong decision because Alabama didn't play this weekend and SMU had to. And SMU had to play a good team. So, penalizing them for a loss and still having a better record, I think that would have been the wrong thing to do. And I guess my big takeaway from it is if you're not in the top 10 and you lost 3 games, you really just don't have a fight to pick. I mean, I think, is it possible for a 12 seed to win the tournament? Yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, odds are with this new system, we're seeing the best representation of college football. And honestly, SMU and Alabama aren't built to win a championship.
Right. Honestly, if SMU didn't make that second half comeback, we probably would be doing the same, like the different thing. Like if Clemson just blew them out, Alabama was more than likely was going to get in. So the fact that SMU was able to battle their way back, almost beat them. Yeah, I mean, that's what really came down to it. And it just came down to SMU had 11 wins. They were in the conference championship, in Alabama really had 2 ugly losses, losing to 21 points to Oklahoma and Vandy is not a good sign. SMU, their one loss was to a good BYU team that was ranked just a couple of spots for Alabama. So I know that it really, like, their strength of schedule wasn't as good. So I'm seeing a lot of people saying, like, oh, some of these teams should just play like, I don't know, like Nichols every week and just get into their conference play undefeated. But we'll get into that in the offseason. But the next question that I had, should the college football playoff re-examine the seeding? I know that we talked about, with the automatic conference champions getting a bye. But like I mentioned, it feels like, the 6 seed and the 5 seed have an advantage when the 1 seed, like Oregon, they go 13-0 and they kind of get screwed of having to play Ohio State and Tennessee. So how do you think that they should look at the seeding moving forward after this year?
I like keeping the automatic bids, but I do think the seeding should just be based off of the
if you're ranked number 7, you're the 7th seed. That's how it should be. It should be like that.
I mean, it's just natural how it's going to shake out. I mean, look at the NFL. I mean, the AFC North has 3 of the best teams in football. Yeah. And is the system perfect? Is one going to be the 2 seed? No, but they're just going to be ranked 1, 2. Oh, actually, they won't. So yeah, NFL, you need to fix it too. Let's quit prioritizing conference winners, division winners, whatever.
Yeah, that's right. They do NFL has some problems too because like the NFC South getting like
they'll be hosting
game.
The Vikings with 2 losses.
Yeah,
I'd say rank them or have a preset template. SEC 1 plays Big Ten 4. If that's how you want to do it, so be it. But yeah, I think you rank them all season for a reason. Make that count for something.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get into one more award. If you're with us, we did our award show last season, but we do have one more that we wanted to save after the conference championship games because who knows? Maybe somebody would have went off. But Wade, who is your SEC fantasy MVP for this season?
Well, I don't think anybody won us away over the weekend, so I'm going to stick with Jackson Dart. I just think he was the most dynamic player. Or actually, we picked Dylan Sampson, didn't we? But yeah, I mean, let's face it, MVP screams quarterback. So I'll go with Dart, but Sampson certainly deserving as well.
That's who was my pick. So I'm glad that you went with Jackson Dart. But yeah, Dylan Sampson every single week. I feel like he was just getting over 100 yards. So one of the main reasons why you see Tennessee in the college football playoff, Dylan Sampson, I mean, he was a beast for the
That is true.
Volunteers.
You did get them there.
Yep. Next one that we have, which non-college football playoff bowl game are you most excited to watch?
If they don't opt out, the Colorado and BYU game could be very good. The Alamo Bowl is just always a good one to watch for whatever
why
reason.
the heck is there two Big 12 teams like playing? Is like there was like not enough teams. I don't know how like the tie-ins work with that.
Because the Pac-12 blew up and they had all these commitments. They're supposed to prioritize teams that were in the Pac-12.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to keep it here in the SEC. Like I mentioned, Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt is the game that I'm most excited for because those are two quarterbacks. I could just get after you, Haynes King and Diego Pavia. There's some other good ones there, especially the early ones like Memphis and West Virginia. I think that's going to be a good one. But yeah, we'll pretty much get bowl games through the early part of January because college football national championship is until January 20th. There still, the college football season, I know the regular season is over with, but we do have the bowl games to get to. So let's get to some questions and comments now. Neo said, I support the conference champion bye as it's a solid reward for winning your conference. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the conference championship game has to mean something. And then for the college football playoff era, the top seed gets the pick, but not sure about now 12 team, which is why 19 LSU went to Peach over Fiesta. Well, good thing they went to the Peach and played Oklahoma, not the Fiesta when they had to play Clemson or Ohio State in that game. But something to keep in mind moving forward. And Chet Way, he's actually commenting on this show. Kind of shocking that Texas didn't load the box. There was 0% chance Beck was throwing the ball. Yeah, if you didn't.
Yeah, but all he had to do was a little dink pass.
Yeah, if you didn't watch the game, it was actually Carson Beck handing the ball off on that game-winning touchdown to Trevor Etienne. I saw at the couple. I saw like an interview of Texas. They didn't even know that Carson Beck was
one of the Georgia guys. Didn't even know.
Yeah, no one knew it was Carson Beck in the game, which is wild.
So what's the story there? You don't have a third stringer that's ready to go?
Man, I guess not. Some of these teams, I guess they just don't know what's coming. They just don't like. Do they not watch any film just in case if the backup comes in? But I guess not. But that is it for our show. For this week, SEC Championship recap and bowl games to watch. Next week, it's all college football playoff. We'll look at the SEC matchups and also the other first-round matchups and also make our picks of who's going to win it all this year. So definitely stay tuned to that. And we'll also finish up our SEC fantasy draft with our college football playoff teams that we have. So we appreciate everybody for tuning into this week's show, and we will see y'all next week as SEC Talk. The football version of it continues, and our off season will begin here in the next couple of weeks. So we appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next time. So long for now.